You're listening to Rikki and Jimmy on Relationships, the show where we uncover the thoughts and behaviors that are sabotaging your relationship and what you can do about it. Jimmy and I are passionate about sharing the ways that imperfect partners like you and I can shift unhealthy relational dynamics and create closeness. So welcome. Drop your defenses and open your heart, eyes, and ears. Let's learn how to be the best partner we can be together. Hey, we're back. Thanks for joining us today. Jimmy and I have an episode called Help, I Lose Myself in Relationships. And I think that this one today is one that he and I can both personally relate to. It's definitely something that I've had trouble with in all of my relationships, probably.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I've had trouble in every single one of my relationships, losing myself or whatever you want to call it. If you want to call it people pleasing, I'm sure we'll get into all of that, but
yeah, this one may go beyond people pleasing too. I know that with people outside of my romantic relationship, my friends and my family, I do find myself doing and saying lots of things that aren't super authentic to me because I want to make other people happy. But in the romantic realm, I find myself doing things exactly like my partner or relating to things exactly like I think my partner would. It's like that urge to like meld and become your partner in such a way that feels really safe. Like there's no way they're going to leave me if I'm exactly like them. And that's not nearly as big of a problem with friends and family, for sure, for me.
I love that. There's so many of those stories. I'm sure that I had a lot. I'm sure that I did that subconsciously. I can't think of any examples right now, but it's kind of like when you start dating somebody and they're like an avid hiker and you're like, I love hiking. Yeah. You're like, I could hike. You're like, I'm going to buy some hiking stuff. And your friends are like, you hate hiking. Like, what are you doing?
That was me. You're talking about me. And don't get me wrong. I did love hiking, but I loved hiking like a mile on flat ground. And my partner, or the guy that I was dating, loved hiking like 3,000 feet over rough terrain with bears and in the rain. And I certainly didn't have any of the equipment for it. And it's just, I was game to buy absolutely any piece of equipment. I didn't say no to any hike, no matter how difficult or intimidating. Everything, I said everything was fun, even if it wasn't. And I feel weird about that now, to where before it felt really natural. Like if he loves this, I love this. If he loves this, I'm going to at least give it a shot because I love everything about him. And I look back at that person now and I'm like, I do wish that every now and then I would have suggested, let's go do some of the things that I love. Or I would have said, wow, that hike is a little outside of my skill level and comfort zone. Let's do something a little easier and work our way up to it. But what are you going to do, right? That's
I feel
the journey.
Same way. Yeah. I definitely can remember. I mean, for the longest time, until I got married and started this journey, unfortunately, I didn't really ever think about what I needed or what I wanted or,
totally.
I just never thought about that. That wasn't, that's too much of a scary thing. Like if I advocated for my needs, what if they don't like that?
Totally.
And that's how you lose yourself. Like that's the step one on how to lose yourself in a relationship.
Right. Be sure that your needs will drive the other person away and throw them in the garbage.
That's where they belong. Right in the garbage. Yeah.
Tie some lead to their feet and throw them in a river. That's what I did with all my needs anyway. And it's crazy now. I'm 5 years into my relationship, my marriage now. I just got married.
Congratulations.
Thanks. I'm 5 years in and I feel like I'm just now within the last couple of years, really hardcore considering what are my needs and who am I when he's not around, when it's just me, who is this person? So the episode today, I think our plan is to give people some tips on how to get to know who that person is.
I love that. Yeah. I think this will help even for the Franks listening, for any first time listeners. That's generally what we call, maybe an avoidant attacher that's listening. That I think that you'll still get a lot out of this because, well, one, you'll help learn how to love your partner a little bit better because they might be prone to losing themselves or defaulting to what you want. And you can if you're interested, you can show them a lot of love just by simply leaning in their direction and saying, hey, I don't know if you do that. Do you kind of like put my needs before yours? And they're like, yeah. You're like, oh, well, I want you to feel like your needs matter too. And that, hearing that is such a loving, like for them, they would be like, oh my gosh, like you care about my needs too. So, but then comes the hard part of that person actually identifying, even if someone asked you, what are your needs? Cause I want to fulfill them. That's still really difficult for a lot of people. They're like, I don't know. And we actually did a whole episode on needs. I'm sure we'll reference it a little bit here and there throughout this episode, but go back a couple episodes. I think it was 2 episodes ago. We talked all about what are healthy needs, what are kind of inappropriate needs in a relationship. I loved that episode. So go check it out.
I did too. That was a really good one. Should we just get right into it with some ideas for everyone? Because I think, and I have to admit, a lot of these are going to be coming from personal experience from both myself and Jimmy, because we've had to do these things and figure out who we are. Because I don't think either of us got into our current relationships like, I'm fully healed and perfectly good at all these things. I was definitely still making all the same old mistakes when I met Chris, and I still do from time to time.
I still struggle obviously with advocating for my needs and setting healthy boundaries, but I'm light years ahead of where I was. I mean, I never used to set any sort of boundaries, and that I know exactly where that leads now, which is just like feeling completely disconnected from even yourself and the relationship. But anyways, I'd love to hear your tips.
Yeah. Well, the first one, the first thing that I did that was the most helpful, I'm an avid journaler, as anybody who's listened for any amount of time knows. And I busted my journal out one day and I wrote down a huge list of the things that I did before I met him. It was really helpful for me to write down the things that I did when I was single, because honestly, most of the things that I did in relationships with other people were for that other person or because of that other person. So going back to a time when I was single and unattached, or in relationships where there was a lot more give, and the other person was looking to me a little bit more, I finally had myself a list of things that I seemed to like to do without any pressure from anybody else. Mm-hmm. Do you know when I say that, Jimmy, do things pop into your head? Like, okay, I've got a list of some things that I did when I was single that seemed like these are me. These are the things that I do, not for other people, but because I enjoy them.
Yeah. I think that's definitely, I don't know if my list was the same. Like, yeah, I don't know if I had an extensive list, but yeah.
No? Well, and you know what? Some of the listeners don't. I know right on the heels of my divorce, I would get a night to myself where I was like all alone in that sad little apartment. And I would go, I have no idea who I am or what I like or
what to do. What do I do now?
Yeah. And sometimes I would just sit and I would feel really bad for myself because I'm like, dang, this is the time when I should be doing all the things that I wish the other person would do. And now that I can, I don't even know how to do them or what they are. So that's okay if your list is very short. Hopefully this episode today will help you create some of those things because it's not too late for that too.
Yeah. And this goes into kind of kids too, because I have 4 kids for anybody that doesn't know. And if you don't kind of get lost in your relationship, I tend to feel like I'm the stay-at-home dad. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of moms will resonate with the fact that when you finally do get some downtime, sure, there's plenty of things in your mind. Like, I know I need to clean. I know I need to do this. I know I need to do that. But like, if you have time just for you, like, you don't even know what to do. Like I don't even know what I'm supposed to do because it's been so long.
Oh yeah. Yeah. My sister, who also has 4 kids, has said that exact thing to me many times. So it's not just our relationships that we lose ourselves in. It's definitely our children, our jobs. There's all kinds of things that can take the space of who we are and what we want to do with our time that's not obligated to someone else.
Yeah.
I guess that's your turn now. Do you have an idea for folks? What things have you done personally that have helped you figure out who you are outside of your relationship?
Oh gosh.
Not like, you're in the hot seat now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so you're looking for things that I've done to kind of reconnect with my old self. to make sure that I don't.
Or to discover things about yourself. That would be okay too.
I don't know. I'll be honest. I haven't done that. My youngest is still 4. I'm finally getting some time to myself now that he's in like preschool. And so, but I kind of just, I mean, I create content during my downtime. And so that is for me, like that is an expression, that is an expression of me. But it's also kind of like, it feels like a job. So it kind of feels like, I mean, it's like, both. I'm not really,
I didn't realize that today we'd be covering something that like you're dealing with right now. This is great. This is great. This is what I was hoping for the episode today. Okay, great. Well, I've got a bunch of tips for you. So maybe make comments on it, ask questions if it's something, if I say something and you're like, well, how does that work exactly? Obviously making a list of things that we like to do before all those obligations. Another great tip is to stop replacing the word I with we. And I actually ran into that tip maybe like a year ago, and it's something that I've been working on and honestly failing at quite a bit. I notice that when I'm telling stories or I'm talking to family, friends, or even a stranger, it feels much safer and more comfortable for me to always say we. And then now that I'm becoming aware of it, I'm like, gosh, just because I bought a new cream cheese I was really excited about the other day doesn't mean that I have to tell someone we bought a cream cheese that we were really excited about. You know what I mean? So so that's a tough one. I find myself catching myself saying we in unnecessary situations. And I try to say I more often because it's okay for me personally to be excited about cream cheese. That doesn't have to be another way that I've lost myself in my relationship,
I love that. Yeah. I don't struggle with that, but,
well, I don't know. I'll probably keep throwing this back to my sister too. I do notice that a lot of her stories are we involving the kids, instead of herself.
With the kids. Yeah.
Yes.
That's true. That I do struggle with. I don't rarely does the story. And a lot of moms especially will resonate with that, where it's like you ask a mom a question, like, how are you doing? And they're like, yeah, well, Johnny was sick this week and gosh, it was really tough. Like, Brad was gone with his job and it's like, okay, but how are you doing? And they're like, what do you mean?
I know. Right.
Like,
or you'll get we're good, we're good instead of I'm good.
Oh, that's so true. Yeah. Well, yeah, things have been good. Like the family immediately jumps to family, immediately jumps to
totally
something about her husband or something like that. Whereas men don't usually struggle with that as much. If you ask a dude like how he's doing, he's not usually like, well, Brenda was out of town. Like they're,
yeah,
he's like, I'm good.
Yeah, I think you're right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But for anybody who's lost themselves in relationships, it's try I more often and see how that feels, or at least try to notice when you say we for things that are like kind of unnecessary. Like Jimmy just said too, maybe the person is specifically asking about you and you deflect to the whole family or yourself and your partner.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, this one's super obvious. I hate to even say it, but I think it's important to say because so many people aren't doing it. But schedule time with friends and family. And obviously that's like the low hanging fruit. Of course I'm going to say that, but I know that as soon as I get into a relationship, I don't want to schedule time with friends and family. My partner's my favorite thing in the whole world. And if they're available, that's who I want to be with. And, my friends and family, those relationships, would suffer when I would get into relationships. I was the friend who, as soon as they were with somebody, you never see me again until that relationship's over or rocky. And I don't ever want to be that person. My friends and family are such treasured relationships to me, as they should be,
I love that. And I'm not going to bring narcissism into this, but one of the biggest issues if you were dealing with a narcissistic person is that they will try to isolate you from your friends and family. So that's something that you need to be sure of in yourself. Like, I'm not going to I'm not going to lose those relationships. I'm not going to lose my friendships just because I'm in this new exciting relationship, you know?
Sure, totally. And don't do it to yourself either, you know? I definitely didn't have any partner that was pressuring me to be away from my friends and family. I was doing that
we do
all
it to
on my
ourselves.
own. Yeah, but you're right. A relationship where somebody's pressuring you to spend time with them instead of friends and family, that's something that needs to be addressed immediately, because we need that support system. It's good for our relationship. And that's the other thing I was going to say to folks is it doesn't feel like it's good for our relationship. You know, you think you're going to spend time away from them and they're going to forget about you or cheat on you or,
Right.
whatever your anxious mind drums up. But honestly, absence and distance do make the heart grow fonder when you're out enriching your life with that distance. And you can always bring those stories and ideas back to your partner when you return.
It's just so important. Yeah, it's just so important to maintain your life. Like
Totally.
it's not that you never need to see them. It's just that you need to make sure you're maintaining both. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Next one is to participate in hobbies that don't involve your partner. That's really hard for me too. I find now that when I'm looking for a new hobby or something to get into, I tend to shy away from things that I know that my partner would hate. Simply because if they have some free time and I might want to do that hobby with them, it's like I have recently discovered that I really like puzzles. My partner couldn't sit still if you paid him to, so he's not going to sit down and do a puzzle with me. And for the longest time, I didn't want to do hobbies or activities like that because I thought, gosh, the only time I'm going to get to do that is if I specifically make time for myself, and I'm not going to do that. So, I'm not going to do that hobby. Don't do that. Do the hobby that your partner probably won't be into. Try things out that feel like uniquely you. Try things out that are just one person hobbies too. That can be scary, especially for an anxious attacher. But those one person or obscure hobbies and passions and things that you'd like to get into, giving them a try helps you find and keep who you are outside of your relationship.
I love that. Yeah, it helps you to stay connected with yourself. And what do I enjoy doing? Not just what are my responsibilities with my family, and I should really be spending time. I should really be like, playing that game where, I should be doing this or I should be doing that. But rarely do we ask, like, what do I actually enjoy doing, and am I making time for that?
Totally.
Yeah.
Is that an issue for you too, as the primary caregiver? Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that's a big one for my sister as well.
One of my favorite things to do was like play tennis. I used to play tennis all the time before I had kids.
Wow.
And then as soon as I started having kids, it's just something you had to deprioritize just because
sure.
There were other things that just needed to. But I'm at the point now, like I said, my youngest is 4, my oldest is only 9. But I'm at the point now where I could start putting that back in my life, and I do think about that.
Yeah. So it's kind of a time consuming one, isn't it? Tennis.
It is.
It's not something.
It's not as easy. I'm also a runner, and so I didn't come up with this, but somebody told me, like, when you have multiple kids, like, you get one hobby, you get to pick one thing and you get to do. So I kind of picked running because it's easier. I can just leave my house, I can go out, and I can be back in 45 minutes. It's not the end of the world. But whereas golf or tennis or hunting, you're gone for like 6 hours, and and you come back and your spouse hates you. It's a little bit more difficult. So
yeah, I know. I guess I kind of lucked out that my hobby is reading. But you know what? In one way, it's not lucky because I can read with my partner right there. It's tough because my hobby doesn't give me that alone time that's so important. And I do find myself reading right next to him. And even though, yes, that's me and it's just my brain in the book all alone, it's not the same as going off and doing something by yourself,
Yeah, very interesting.
A little bit bigger of a step is to go out or go off and do something by yourself, like go out to eat all alone, or heaven forbid, go on a trip all alone. That's something that I talk about in my first book, The Anxious Heart's Guide. That was actually a challenge that my therapist gave me when he noticed all these codependent things that I was saying and doing. And he said, I challenge you to go out to eat to a restaurant all alone. And it was like the most terrifying thing anyone had ever challenged me to do. Right. I was like, what's the point of that? Also, that's going to be awful. So respectfully decline. No, thank you. But I did it. And it ended up being one of my favorite things to do. I still do it to this day, years and years later. I regularly, at least once a month, go to a restaurant all alone, and I sit and I have a full course meal all by myself. Sometimes I bring a book, sometimes I don't. And I'm just that creepy person staring off into the void eating. But I'm alone, and I'm learning to love it. And sometimes I genuinely do love it. It's been good for me.
Yeah, it's the same for me. Before I got married, and even early in my marriage, that would have made me very uncomfortable. But as you get more mature in your relationship, and especially once you start having kids, I mean, alone time, it doesn't. But I could go literally anywhere, and I wouldn't feel bad. I could go to a movie alone. I could go sit at the busiest restaurant. I could even go to somewhere like a social event. Yeah. I'm even at the point now where I can go to a social event, and I'm pretty extroverted. I enjoy being around people. So, but I have no problem just sitting there and being alone, only because I'm never alone. I'm constantly doing something with my kids. And while I love them to death, it is emotionally draining and physically draining sometimes. And so if I'm at a social event where I have a chance to be alone, nobody's talking to me, I won't go engage with anyone if I don't have to. I'll just sit there and just enjoy. I'm just enjoying watching everybody else have a great time, and I'm having a great time not talking or having to expend any mental energy. I'm just sitting here.
I love it. That alone time is precious when you don't get any of it, isn't it?
Yeah. Gold.
So next we've got don't compromise too much. And
I like that.
That's way easier said than done.
But so much easier. Yeah.
That's one that I've definitely been working on in my own relationship. I find that I used to I don't even want to use the word compromise, because it wasn't a compromise. I would give 100%, meaning
absolutely
whatever he wanted, whatever his idea was, that's what we were doing. But even now, Jimmy, that I'm better at this, I still would tend to give over 50% in my compromise.
You always will. Yeah. It's your default.
It is my default, but we can actually train ourselves out of that a little bit. And it has been wild. I want to say it's just the past year. This has been a new one for me, that I've been stepping back behind that 50% line,
really?
back more onto my side. And I don't want to brag too much, but last week he took me out on a fancy coffee date. Yeah. Okay. That's not something at a sit down coffee place, like not just a casual one, a nice one. And that's not something that he would ever have suggested. I asked for it. Ask and ye shall receive, right? And I did. Right. I asked for it. That's definitely not a compromise. That's literally just something for me that I wanted to do. I asked for it, and he was like, okay, let's go. And I was like shocked. Like, this is actually happening.
It's an interesting debate, because like, I don't know if that's a category where you should have to compromise on. Like imagine that we're together and you're like, Jimmy, I want you to take me out to coffee date. And I'd be like, all right, let's compromise. I'll take you out to Mexican. Like, I don't understand where the compromise would be there.
Wow, that's a really good point.
You're either going to do it or you're not going to do it. Like, I'm not looking for a compromise. I asked you, can you take me out for like a coffee?
Perfect.
And if you compromised, that you wouldn't really be. This isn't a compromising situation.
I see it. All right, so let's change that bullet point. Go back, rewind, erase some of that.
No, I still like it.
Well, no, instead of don't compromise too much, maybe like dare to ask for what you want.
Oh, yeah.
How about
dare
that?
to ask for what you want is a whole section in itself, because
I love it.
I mean, I still struggle with asking for what I want. I think something will pop into my head and I'll go, man, I really want that. And then I know enough now, and I'll go, why don't you just ask for it? And then I'm having this dialogue, obviously, like a crazy person in my head, and I go, I can't do that. That would be that would be
no,
strange.
that would be madness. Actually, that sounds like an amazing skit. I'm requesting that one for the future. That would be so good.
That actually would be a good skit. And it's sad. And there's a bunch of people that are listening right now that don't understand what we're talking about. But there's a bunch of people that do. They're like, yes, that's me. I even when I think about something that I would really like that. It's so hard to ask for it. And don't get me wrong. There's plenty of us out there that there's a good reason why you struggle to ask for it, because, well, oftentimes you were dropped or denied or rejected or something happened to where you were like, this fear is legitimate. We get that.
Mm-hmm. Especially if we've had partners in the past who have told us that we want too much or have been upset about our ideas.
So true.
But I find that I project those fears onto my current partner, who's actually game for most of the stuff that I suggest, even though I'm sure that he won't be.
And part of what Rikki and I want to do, because we care about you and we care about learning this stuff ourselves, is that's part of the reason we talk about this stuff. We that's why we spend so much time. I mean, we did a huge conflict episode. We did a huge needs episode. We did a huge validation episode. And part of the reason we do that is because we want you to feel, we don't want you to feel crazy when you're asking for, like Rikki just said, when you're asking your partner, hey, can you take me out on a nice coffee date? We don't want you to feel like, is that too much? Am I being too needy? We want you to have a little bit of confidence where you're like, you know what? That's not too needy. I'm just asking my partner, can you take me out for coffee? And with that confidence, we can have a lot more. It's not that you're not going to be afraid. Like I just said, I'm still afraid to do it. But there are plenty of times where I still ask my partner for what I'm like, hey, I would really love this. And it's still scary, but I can do it from a place of, I know this is the right thing to do. I know that I'm not asking for too much. And that's kind of where we want you to. It's not that we're taking the fear away. It's that we're putting confidence back. We're helping you understand that I'm not asking for too much.
Yeah, that's really well said. And I want everybody to note that I had a lot of fear when I asked for that. This is with a kind, loving, understanding partner who's game for the things that I want to say, that I want to do. I still had fear that I was asking for too much, that was an excessive request, or that he would say no and I would be crushed. The fear is still there. In security, we do it anyway. We do those things anyway because we know that they're good for us. It's also, if I didn't say it already, a fantastic way to not lose ourselves in our relationship, because asserting the things that we want and need and like is a way that we get to know ourselves. It's a way that our partners get to know us too. And both ourselves and our partners lose out on getting to know that person if we're not talking about the things that we like and want.
I love that. And just to challenge anyone who's listening that's really resonating with this, I'll just add one more point that I like to say. Wouldn't you want to know if they had a need that would make them feel loved or something like that? Wouldn't you want to know? Because the answer is always yes. Of course I would want to know. Well, then
totally.
Shouldn't your partner want to know that about you? And you would say, well, yeah, I guess. It's like, yeah, they should. Like absolutely.
Totally. That's so good. I love that point. Let's see. I hate to say the final one, but really this is what I've got for today, and we can riff on this if you want. Stay true to yourself. And I know that is it's kind of trite. It's kind of easy to say, oh, be true to yourself and then not know how to make that happen if you're the type of person who has trouble with that.
For sure.
But I have a fun little hack that I do.
Okay.
Let's say that my partner has approached me and he's saying, hey, the weather's great. Let's go hike this mountain today. And I know that it's a 4,000 footer. I know it's a really, really tough one, right? And sometimes I ask myself, what would my decision be about this thing if it was just me deciding? I have to ask myself that. I have to take him completely out of the equation to even figure out what my personal opinion on it is. And I have to say, it works like magic, because some days I'm like, yes, it's a beautiful day. I'm up for a challenge. Even if he weren't asking this and it was just me with this as an option, I might give this a try. And some days I'm like, gosh, if he weren't here staring at me right now, asking that question, I'm tired. I really don't feel like it. And so then the tough part becomes being honest with him about what that is, and sometimes I would say, you know what, really, I'm kind of drained today. I'm not feeling up to that. And that's tough. That's tough to say.
It takes so much courage, especially if they're excited about it, especially as an anxious attacher or probably just a regular person. If your partner comes to you excited about it, like, hey, let's go do this thing. And you're like, I don't want to do that at all. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, we all know that there are times where we just have to like bite the bullet and do nice things for our partner.
Totally.
But but that has to be combined with times where you're like, I don't want to do that. And I love you. And like, I'm sorry, but I don't want to do that. Because in the past I would have gone 10 out of 10 times. Like
same. Mm-hmm.
Oh, like I will be there. You can't stop me. Like but I don't want to do that.
I'll beat them up the mountain in those scenarios. I don't even want to be there. And I'm up there first. Maybe this is the part where compromise comes in, right? Because I've found, if he's excited and this is something he really has his heart set on, I will say, hey, we're going, but I'm only up for about a quarter of the mountain. I'm going to hike a quarter of the mountain. You keep going. And I'm going to turn around where I don't have any more energy. I will meet you back at the car. Maybe while you're hiking, I'm going to go get snacks and I'll have snacks for you waiting at the car. And that's one way that I help myself stay true to myself without disappointing my partner too much. Cause we're definitely not saying become this rigid, unmovable person who only does what you want to do. We would never say that. But, the other side is also being true to yourself it's important.
Yeah, I love that. That's a perfect compromise where you can actually stay true to yourself. I know that sounds hokey, but like when I think about staying true to myself, like I didn't know myself, and I'm sure you would agree. Like I didn't. So the first step is like knowing yourself. Like that's what's so important about all of this stuff. When I meet someone who's just getting started in dating or something like that, or this is their first relationship, I'm like, oh my gosh, like. I just want you, there's so much I want for you. I want you to know yourself. I want you to understand what healthy needs are. I want, and that's definitely a part of it where I just want people to understand themselves better or, whatever the word I'm looking for is, like, just know what you need. Know how to connect with yourself, that your worth and value doesn't rest in your relationship status. It's,
totally.
Hey,
I didn't either. That was news to me for sure. Something I had to learn. There's like a trick also. Knowing yourself isn't just about the things that you like to do, the music that you like to listen to. It's knowing yourself is also being attuned to what you're feeling in the moment. And that's another thing that I completely ignored in all of my relationships in the past. If they were excited, I was excited. If they were sad, I was sad. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about there. If you know, on that one, but
all the avoidant attachers are like, I have
like,
no
what is
idea
she talking about?
Yeah.
But the anxious folks, we know, we tend to take on other people's emotions and feelings as well. I have had to learn to tune into my own brain and body and figure out when I'm feeling something that's independent of other people. Let's go back to the hiking example because it's just a perfect one for today. He comes to me excited about this 4,000 foot hike that he wants to do. Sometimes if it gets real quiet in my head and I take a second to notice how I'm feeling about it, I'm not actually feeling that same excitement as him. I'm feeling dread. I'm feeling exhaustion. And we push those things away when we're looking at our excited partner and the thing that they want to do. But I've been working really hard to not push those things away. It just takes a minute to pause to ask yourself, okay, am I noticing any feelings that are different from what they're feeling? What are those and what do I want to do with it?
I love that because I was the perfect empath. Because empaths get such a good reputation. Like, oh, you're empathetic. What's wrong with being empathetic?
Great. Yeah.
It's so great. And most of the time empathetic is really great, except for When you're so empathetic that you turn your own feelings off so that I can match yours. Like I know that they have come up with a term called toxic empathy. I don't really know what the definition is, but I probably just defined it. Like that's probably what it is. Well, it would be
toxic for yourself and toxic for the relationship, you know?
Which it can be, which we don't really think about that very often. But you simply matching the emotions of your partner. It's not about you not being sad when they're sad. Julie Bonanno does a really great job, but she says you kind of have to have one foot in, one foot out. You have one foot in their experience, you know, like they're really sad about something. Take depression, maybe they're depressed. Okay, well, you can have one foot into their experience and you can validate and try to empathize with them and be there for them. But you also kind of have to have one foot that's still in your world. It's not that you need to become depressed with them. That's not the goal, you know. But when you're in a codependent relationship, it's really easy to just simply match if they're happy, then I'm happy. I can relax. Yeah. I'm not stressed. But if they're stressed, I am. We got to fix this. Like if they're stressed, if they're unhappy, well then how can I fix this? You know, and that gets really dangerous really quickly. Where Rikki and I were talking about doing a boundaries episode in a few episodes from now on just like emotional boundaries. That's a really good, because those get really tricky really quickly. Like, it's not my job to fix your emotions, while at the same time, when your partner's upset, of course you want to like be there for them. And hey, is there anything I can do to help you cheer up? So there's a very fine line between like, where is this kind of dangerous and codependent?
Totally. Yeah. Losing yourself in a relationship can be losing your independent emotions as well. You know, if you lose the ability to feel things with one foot out, right? That means that whatever your partner's feeling, you also feel. And I go back to my water metaphors as always. You're on a boat adrift on the ocean of your partner, you know, whatever their seas are doing, that's going to be your atmosphere for the day. You're either going to be weathering a storm or calm sailing, and you don't have any of your own anything to stand on in that case. Oh man, that's really good. Julie Bonanno is just a genius. That having one foot in and one foot out is such a perfect way for us codependent empaths to try to keep a little bit more of ourselves. I'm going to use that because I find, I was just telling you earlier today, I have trouble when my partner's grumpy. It's hard for me to not go into fix it mode or panic or be really upset or sad about that. And that means that I don't have a one foot out, you know, and I need to have one foot out like, hey, I'm sad that he's grumpy. That, you know, that moves me, that bothers me. But also I had a really excellent day other than my time with him. And maybe
you feel guilty for even feeling like, am I even allowed to be happy anymore because they're so upset? Like I might just be speaking for myself, but sometimes I just feel guilty. If I'm in a really good mood and my partner's really upset about something or depressed, I'm like, am I even alled to be happy? Like am I gonna hurt them now? Now I have to be sad, or now I have to I can't be happy because then now they're gonna feel
they're sad
even worse.
I'm really glad you added that, because that's not my experience with it. For me, it's more like, I don't know, I just need them to be happy at all costs. And that's not good either. Like, we need to be able to allow our partners to have bad days, but if I've got one foot out, I can use that calm, not necessarily happiness. It's not like I'm off skipping and dancing while he's upset, but I can use that calm to be kind of a rock for him. You know, if he wants to talk to me about it, or I know that when I'm really crabby, I really appreciate that he's not also losing his mind when he's still able to whistle and make himself a sandwich, even when I'm storming around the house. It kind of has a calming effect on me sometimes. And then I can go, okay, I'm really upset, but my partner's not over here losing it. Maybe I can lean on him a little bit. Maybe I could even enlist a little bit of help in lifting myself up out of this, because he seems to be doing okay.
Yeah. Another way we lose ourselves that I thought about was like overfunctioning, especially overfunctioning, underfunctioning dynamic, where normally when you lose yourself, when you're the partner that feels kind of lost, you're the overfunctioner. And I don't know if you have experience with that, but feel free to chime in on kind of what that if you've had any overfunctioning experiences.
Yeah, I would say I'm the master overfunctioner. That's definitely one that, and
well, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I have a gold star in it. It doesn't, and for the folks who are uninitiated in this, an overfunctioner is somebody who's taking it on themselves to take on more than their responsibility in the relationship, whether that's the emotional work or the housework or the working on the relationship itself. Yeah. Any of those things. And when we do that, we kind of put our partner in the perfect position to be a little lazy about that stuff. And I don't know about you, Jimmy, but when I put my partner in a position to be lazy and he takes that bait, then I blame him for it. And that 100%. Doesn't feel great either, you know?
Yeah. Not to mention the fact that if both of you are kind of stressed in a relationship, one of you tends to overfunction to kind of as a way to kind of cope with the stress. And one of you tends to underfunction. Like you get stressed and that causes you to not want to do extra things or get really productive. It causes you to actually do less. And that creates a cycle where obviously now the other person feels completely neglected and the burden is all on them. So really, I mean, the only way out of that is step one is you have to have a hard conversation about it and you have to talk about where we're at. Like, hey, this is I feel like I'm just taking the burden of all this. I feel like I'm taking on the emotional labor here. I feel like I'm taking on the lion's share of the mutual chores, the domestic labor, or the mental load, whatever you want to call it. We have to be able to have those tough conversations and actually be able to collaborate on that.
Absolutely. And if you're listening and you're nodding and you're going, yep, that's me, I'm the overfunctioner, I bet you $1 million that you're overfunctioning. The time that it takes for you to do all that extra stuff is taking time away that you could be getting to know yourself or doing things to enrich yourself and get to know who you are and what you like. Because a lot of that overfunctioning we do out of fear too. You know, I'm afraid that this won't get done, or I'm afraid that something bad will happen if I don't step in and rescue the situation. That takes time away from us. And, you know, it takes, obviously we know that, but we don't think about how it takes time away from us enjoying our life. It takes time away from us just relaxing or chilling. And I have to say, I've also been the underfunctioning partner in certain aspects, and your underfunctioning partner doesn't want you to have that burden. You think they do, but they don't really want that for you either, especially if it's upsetting you.
Yeah. And it's just not a dynamic that we can continue without at least addressing it in some capacity, because you will become exhausted. You'll become resentful. So
absolutely you will.
Yeah. It's so important. I think that was perfect, Rikki.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of good stuff there. I think there's a lot of meat that folks can bite into if they're struggling with this. I know that these are things, like I said, these aren't things that you just hear and you employ and then you're good to go and you're done forever. They take a lot of work, a lot of practice.
Yeah, I love that. But you can do it. It takes hard conversations. It takes some learning how to set boundaries. It takes finding ourselves again, but it's worth it because you need that in your relationship.
Yes. And your partner needs you to do it as well. Your partner wants to know who you are as a unique individual person. And in case my sister's listening to this too, your kids also want to know who you are as a unique person. You know, it's wonderful to take care of our children and our partner, but without having our own things and interests and passions, we're kind of just a helpful shell that nobody really gets to know. And the people who love us don't want that for us.
I love that. That was well said. All right. So we'll see you in the next one. Email us if you have any good suggestions for what we should talk about.
Yeah, please do. We love the emails. And if we can't get to all of them, I read almost all the emails. If I don't reply, it doesn't mean that I'm not reading them. I still do. So I want to hear about everything. I love feedback on the podcast too. We love reviews. Reviews are fantastic. Those are a lot of fun to read. And comments on the YouTube videos are also things that get gone through. Put your requests down there as well.
Thank you guys so much.